The Cleveland Cavaliers are off to a ridiculous start this year. We all saw that coming, right? What can the Heels learn from their offense, though?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, November 14th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and we want to say a special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord and, of course, the great Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today, as he always does for our Thursday shows, Coach Bill Robinson, the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes, kind enough to join us. We're recording on Wednesday afternoon, joining us on a game day for him. Coach Rob and his team take off for their first conference game of the season. That's actually going to factor into our conversation later today, as it's their sixth straight road game to start this season. Road Warriors, these dudes right now are 4-1. So, Coach, here's where we're headed today. Carolina's offense has already had some incredible moments, and so we want to talk about how they can continue to grow and show all sorts of great stuff. And are there some things we can learn from the Cleveland Cavaliers offense? We're also going to look at the percentage of Carolina's shots that are three-pointers right now, and if that's kind of in the range of where it needs to be with a new look offense. And then also we want to kind of wrap up the show today talking about what Carolina is benefiting from having these early season road tests. And also, as we get into it, I need to mention Duke's loss on Tuesday night. Several people were like, look, Isaac, I need you to talk about Cooper Flagg on the show. Here's the deal. Phenomenal performance in the Champions Classic, 26 points, but unfortunately, 2 turnovers back-to-back late in the game, and then the missed box out on the free throw, kind of costing Duke. This is the yin and the yang of leaning on a 17-year-old to be your dude. You're going to have big-time moments, but you're going to have some others that aren't. And we are not crying over that spilled milk. We'll just keep rolling with our more experienced guys and let Duke complain about, but you're beating us with younger guys. Play older dudes. Okay, Coach, there you go. There's our Cooper Flagg segment of the day. Never a disappointment to talk about Duke losing. So here it is. There is one undefeated team in the NBA right now, the 12-0 Cleveland Cavaliers. Although, as I said, we're recording this Wednesday before they play at Philly tonight. The 76ers 2-8, so probably Cavs are still 13-0 as you're listening to this. But recently, Coach, the Cavs head coach, Kenny Atkinson, was asked about modern offense. Spencer Davies, who covers the Cavs for Sports Illustrated, tweeted, "Everybody looks at threes, but it's more than that. It seems so simplistic, but I was really curious. Can cutting be just as effective as stretching the floor with shooters on the perimeters while playing 5 out?" So he asked Coach Atkinson about this. He said, a lot of people look at 5 out and think that spacing is the most important thing. Can a cutter and that off-ball movement be as important as three-point shooting and spacing? Coach Atkinson says, 100% you're right with me. Yes, and it's a big emphasis. What we've tweaked is this. I think the old NBA was space. Everyone kind of stand and one guy plays pick and roll. Now it's a lot more cutting. It's hard to defend when guys are moving, so it's intentional. We have shared principles on how we cut. Cutting opens up space. I think the old way of thinking was, doesn't cutting get in the way? But it actually creates vacuums and driving lanes. So it's a big point of emphasis for us. So, Coach, I'm sorry for me talking a lot, but there was all that setup we needed to do to get into this conversation. What, as you hear this idea, because obviously Carolina is in kind of a new look offense this year without a traditional big in the middle. And I'm curious your thoughts on this idea of not just spacing in threes, but how spacing opens lanes and can be utilized for cutting.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but we talk about concepts between sports sometimes having a correlation. But soccer, I play a little bit of soccer and watch some soccer, and it's about creating space and filling space. So you see somebody cut through, and sometimes that cut is just maybe a little divergent so we can fill space behind where that guy's coming from. And I think that's what Coach Atkinson's talking about. He's creating openings by cutting. And Jay Billis has talked about it too. The most maybe the most profitable movement in the game right now is a cut to the basket.
Mm.
And they're so hard to defend. And if it's a completed pass, it's going to lead to a layup or a foul. And either way, it's points. So it's very underrated, very, very difficult to guard somebody who never stands still. I had a guy, Jesse Gardner, played for me many years ago in Montreat, and he was one, if not the best offensive player I've ever had because he never stopped moving. He was such
Mm.
a pain in the neck to guard because guys hated guard him in practice. Nobody wanted to guard him ever because he never stopped moving. And I think that's what the concept is here. It's much harder to defend somebody when you just don't know where they're going, and constant movement allows them to continue, not just to make plays for themselves, but to create opportunities for other people.
Man, this is so intriguing to me, Coach, because I think my assumption coming into this year, and we're going to talk about 3-point shooting more in the next segment, was this is just going to be for the purpose of shooting, but without a big man in the middle, it really does. If the paint's empty, naturally there are going to be driving lanes. But Coach, what I think specifically about Carolina's personnel and like this 3-guard lineup that seems to me primed to take advantage of what the Cavaliers are doing right now. And so what would that look like as you think about Carolina doing this? How would you envision that type of offense truly playing out?
Yeah, there's some kind of Princeton principles. It's hard to say, but some Princeton ideas that you have where if you dribble at somebody, they make that back cut. What happens there is you either don't defend it, you get a backdoor for a layup, or you can drag multiple people, the attention gatherer when somebody does cut, allowing a more wide open 3-pointer or an open pass that leads to a one more pass that leads to an open look. So the movement can create more than just a layup or more than just a back cut. Can lead to jump shots or open shots on the perimeter for other guys. So just the actual movement itself can allow itself to open up all kinds of opportunities offensively.
So, I mean, do you envision this as something the Tar Heels could they use these principles, and would it be to their advantage?
Oh, definitely. But it is like Coach was talking about with the Cavaliers. It's got to have a purpose. There's got to be actual organization with it. It's not just random guys cutting because you don't want guys cutting on top of each other. One of my biggest pet peeves is when you throw a post entry and then you got guys cutting right on top of that, bringing more defensive help to that guy. So there is a time and a place. But when it's organized and it's in a way where guys know exactly what their movement's supposed to be, it can be super beneficial.
So we need to watch folks, as you're watching Carolina tomorrow night as they host American. Watch for this spacing and how it can be used. How does Seth Trimble or RJ Davis intentionally use cutting and movement to create space and open space? Um, you know, Coaches, as I think about it, um, is this more a guard centric idea, or would you expect, like with the Jae'lyns in the starting lineup, how do they involve themselves and replace and move along with the guards? What are the differences there?
I think it's everybody. I don't think it just happens to be the guards, but even slips off screens with teams wanting to switch more and more. Uh, Ghosting screens has become much more prevalent in the last 2 or 3 years. Even the big guys, because they can shoot, you know, both Jalen's have the ability to, instead of setting screens, to be able to slip screens. We have one of our guys who plays the 4 for us, but we don't want him, especially late shot clock. We never want him to actually set a screen. We want him to ghost every screen. And not only does that get him open looks, but it creates that vacuum that we're talking about, where all of a sudden, they're expecting a switch or expecting some help, and with him sliding through there instead of setting that screen, there's nobody there offensively or defensively, leaving a gap where now the dribble is able to get some penetration and a kick, or just take it all the way to the rim and finish.
And what I love about Hubert Davis, Coach, is it seems like he's got a willingness to engage in things and to continue to exploit them. That's part of what allowed Carolina's comeback on Friday night at Kansas is realizing like, hey, we can involve Hunter Dickinson and pick and roll and getting Kansas into rotation and then just keep exploiting that over and over and over. And so if Carolina could find the opportunities to use this cutting action to their advantage, I think that Hubert Davis would continue to lean into it some. And so as you think about what you are seeing thus far, I mean, it's only 2 games, right? Elon and Kansas, but thus far, what are you seeing from this Carolina offense that right now rates as the number 10 offense at KenPom?
Yeah, I think they're still figuring themselves out. And when I mean that, I think the coaching staff is figuring out, what the strengths. Obviously, you know what you're going to get from RJ. He's had a tough start, but yeah, he's going to get his numbers. He's going to be great. But you're learning how those freshmen are going to react. What are their strengths? Where do they like to get the ball? What are those little things that you can only find out in actual competition? It's hard to figure those out, during practice, even long practices. Long stretches. I mean, they've been going all summer, but there's still certain things you have to find out about guys once they actually get into competition. Joe Holiday used to talk about all the time, who can make shots when the lights are on. It's easy to make them in practice. And I think you've seen, obviously RJ makes shots. It's great to see some of those other guys step up. Who would have thought that, Jalen Withers is going to lead the team in 3-point percentage after, 2 games and makes. That to me is super encouraging to see some of those other guys stepping up.
Okay, we'll keep our eyes on that and how it's ever evolving, because it's going to be as the young season wears on. So that's a great look at that. But Coach, specifically, you were just talking about 3-point shooting. I want to look at that because Carolina is utilizing the 3-point shot at near historic levels for their standards, maybe not at the national level. We're going to unpack what we mean by that and take a little Goldilocks look at, are they shooting the ball from 3 too much, not enough, or just right? Right after I tell you about FanDuel, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. How about some ACC regular season odds? ACC regular season right now has Duke at FanDuel as the champion minus 105. UNC second at plus 380. Then Clemson and Wake tied at plus 1200. Miami plus 1600. And rounding out that top 6 is Pitt at plus 1900. So just visit FanDuel.com to join and get in on that action or anything else at FanDuel today. Again, you'll get started with 150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com, where you should never waste a hunch and go make every moment more. FanDuel, it's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're going to continue, Coach Rob and I, to take a look at Carolina's offense so far this year. I think we assumed that the Tar Heels would take more threes this year as part of playing a little more five-outy kind of basketball. And so far, Coach, that is proving true from the numbers, the statistics. In the Hubert Davis era, Carolina has obviously taken a big jump in the percentage of their shots that are coming from 3-point range. His first year, it was 38% of their shots. 22-23 season, 37.6%. Last year, 36.1%. But so far this year, Coach, they are shooting 38.5% of their shots from 3. In the KenPom era, which dates back to the 96-97 season, Dean Smith's last, that is the second highest percentage of shots from 3 that Carolina is taking, shy of only Matt Doherty's last year, where the Tar Heels took 39.9% of their shots from 3. So, Coach, my question to you to start off this segment is this. Do you think, for how this team is constructed and what they're looking to do, that is not enough 3-point attempts, too many 3-point attempts, or just right? Where are you at?
I think right now it's just right, and it all comes down to personnel.
Okay.
Everybody that's in the rotation right now shoots threes, and some are going to shoot higher volume than others, but there's not anybody who's playing, significant minutes right now that doesn't shoot them at one point or another. Unlike Armando, where you had a guy who's playing 30 minutes a game and getting a high majority of shots, and he's not shooting threes at all. So that's going to skew the numbers, obviously, this year,
Sure.
with not a true back to the basket post player. But it does come down to personnel. The numbers right now, their shooting percentage is not great. But I think we all think that those numbers will go up for sure, especially RJ's numbers.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the style that they're playing, we don't want to get to the point where we're shooting more than that because you're not getting to the foul line. Those days where Carolina used to make more free throws than their opponents took are gone. And that style of basketball is gone. but they still need to get to the line more than their opponents. They need to make more than their opponents. And I think when they got aggressive at the end of the Kansas game is when they really started playing well. They got to the line, they got the defense on their heels, and they were in complete attack mode. And I think that's more of what it is. Let's get to attack mode. Let's get to the rim. Let's get to the paint. And if it allows, somebody does get stay in front, now we can kick out to those open threes. But it's more the open threes that I want to take. I don't want those contested ones.
And what's interesting is, to your point, Coach, the percentages are going to start coming up. Right now, RJ's sitting at 22% from three, Drake 25%. Jalen Washington hasn't hit one yet. He hasn't necessarily taken a ton, just 2 3-point attempts so far from him. But yeah, I mean, the guy, as you said earlier, Jalen Withers leading the team right now. Seth Trimble second, Ian Jackson third, Elliot fourth, and those are the only guys shooting over 30% from three, but they're all shooting over 40% from three. So that's encouraging. As a team right now, folks, Carolina 36.4%. And, I think you would live with that for sure. Anything 35% and above is great. But Coach, here's what's interesting to me. Even at taking 38.5% of their threes or of their shots from three, Carolina is 200th in the nation right now in that percentage, meaning there are 199 teams who are taking a higher percentage of their shots from three. Coach, I'm curious your thought about the state of basketball when you hear that.
I think it's out of control, to be honest with you. And compared to our team, but we play, 5 games. We 28% of our shots are threes. We have some good post players we're throwing it into, so that does skew the numbers a little bit.
Sure.
I saw something in the LeBron James era of the NBA, 21 years. When he started, they were taking less than 15 threes a game as the total NBA. Now it's up to 35 threes a game. And that's, people are like, oh, back in the 80s when Larry Bird. Now, this is just the LeBron. This is not that long, 20 years. That's the way the game has changed so dramatically. And I don't necessarily think it's for the better. I think I watched a little bit of, I guess the Warriors were on late last night and watched a little bit at the beginning of that game. And the possessions are short. You don't have to defend very long. It's one ball screen and a three. It was the Mavs, so it was Luka. And that's just kind of the way that they play. But it is very, very, very different than it was 20 years ago. And again, back to Steve Robinson's quote, you can't shoot, you don't recruit. So everybody's got to be able to shoot 1 through 5 nowadays. And it has changed the game, and I don't think we're going back.
Yeah. It just so happens that I track, to your point about NBA shooting, I track college 3-point shooting NCAA Division I wide every year, Coach. And last year it hit a new high of 21.95 attempted threes per game. I pulled it up while you were talking there. And going back, the beginning of the LeBron era, so like the 04-05 season when Carolina won the championship, nationally across D1, 18.36 3-point attempts per game. So that has risen nationally like 3.5 attempts per game just in that span. So pretty crazy stuff there. Coach, I feel like you talked about attack. I think that is the word I have used about Carolina's offense more than any other word this season so far. I've heard that word come out of my mouth over and over and over again, partly because I say it 3 times every time I say it: attack, attack, attack. So that exponentially grows it. But I say that because yes, I'm right with you, and I think that's where Carolina's bread is going to be buttered. Is like Friday was a perfect example of that. Even though Elliot and RJ did not have good shooting nights, they were dudes at the free throw line, as was Seth Trimble, who was a perfect 10 of 10. And so, Coach, this ability to attack is obviously, yes, going to lead to hopefully 3-point attempts as the defense sucks in on that. But how can they continue to balance that as the world around them is not, to your point about it being out of control?
It starts with the defensive end. They got to get stops. It's really hard to attack a defense that's set and back and ready to play. So the defensive stops lead to the ability to attack. And I've always talked about the perfect game for an offensive coach is not to call anything, is to play in such a flow and a pace where you're in attack mode the whole time and you're just making plays in transition and you don't have to set up anything. Now that's never going to happen, obviously, but the system that they're going to, I believe they're going to devise for this year is going to be much more of that open. Let's get attacked. Let's find the bad mismatch. Let's find the one guy who can't stay in front of the ball. Let's attack that guy and make sure that he's on his heels all the time. Force help to come and then make plays when the defense gets to scramble mode. And the more that they can do that, and again, the other night was Hunter Dickinson, who's arguably their best player, at least probably the most that everybody talks about. But let's he can't sit down and guard somebody. He can't guard ball screens very well. Let's go attack him and get to the line. And they did a great job of that second half.
Yeah, 100% they did. And right now, sitting at 9th in the country in free throw percentage. That's the good thing. Not only is Carolina getting there, but they're converting them at a crazy rate. And to Coach's point about getting out and running, the first 2 games, Carolina got against Elon, 20% of all their points were from fast breaks. And against Kansas, it was 19%. And so just want to keep doing that, keep getting out and running. So we'll keep our eyes on this, Coach, this number, the percentage of Carolina's shots coming from 3 and how they're managing that, not letting it get out of control, but utilizing it well, especially as we all expect RJ Davis's percentage to come way up, along with Cade Tyson, right? We got to get him going. And that was a conversation on yesterday's show. All right, Coach, Carolina obviously did not win Friday night at Kansas, unfortunately, but they got their second great road experience in the early part of this season. What's the benefit from that, and how is it going to help Carolina long term? We'll have that conversation in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, college basketball season is here, and there is absolutely nothing better than the great atmosphere of a college basketball game, the anticipation of what's going to happen, energy of the crowd, who knows what's going to go down, and you want to be there to make sure you catch it all. And thankfully, there's a ticketing app called Game Time that helps you get great tickets at a great price. Well, great news, when you're getting tickets through Game Time this year, they got a new feature called Game Time Picks that's got curation to make it even easier to save more on those sports tickets. But not only that, Game Time's got comedy and theater and concerts and so much more. All of these live events. So whether it's Game Time ticket coverage, their lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat in the app, Game Time has got you covered. Man, you know this game coming up. Carolina hosting Alabama in a couple weeks in the ACC-SEC Challenge. Boy, do we owe the Crimson Tide some revenge and want to get it. And you need to be there to help cheer on the Tar Heels. There are tickets right now. You can get in the door for as cheap as $88. That doesn't seem too bad for a game of this magnitude. And so, man, go to Game Time, get some tickets, show up in the Dean Dome, and cheer on the Heels. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download their app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. It was disappointing, obviously, Coach, for the Tar Heels to have fought all the way back, get a lead at Kansas Friday night, and ultimately not be able to hang on to what would have been the best non-conference win any team has this season. But there are things you can take away that are other types of wins, one of which is Carolina learned that we can go anywhere and play against anyone and hang. How beneficial is that experience that they had on the road on Friday night?
Yeah, just for kicks, I went on Google and said, what's the benefit of a basketball team playing road games? And none. And I disagree with that. I mean, it really did. It came back and said there's none, absolutely no. Like you were saying, this will be our 6th game on the road tonight. One of the big benefits is it allows you to bond together. There's no family, there's no friends, there's no distractions. It's just you and the guys in the locker room, or you guys on that bench. We've traveled pretty well this year. We've had fans at every game, even the games in Tampa. We had great show outs from our family. But you're not. One of the biggest things for me is you're not going to get the calls the same regardless of where you are if you're on the road than you are at home, and you have to be able to prepare for that. You can't expect if you drive in and you fall down at the basket that you're going to get a call. At home, you might get that call. On the road, you're not. And we've got to learn how to play through those type of opportunities. You're going to have adversity on the road. You've got to learn how to deal with that. Coach Williams talked about that a lot. That's why he wouldn't call timeouts when we all desperately wanted him to. But he wanted the guys to fight through that and to figure it out themselves. And they grew up quicker because they had to figure it out. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We want to be playing, January, February basketball in December, where we have to grow up a little bit faster because we don't have a bunch of home games early. And I think Saturday's our first home game. I think it'll make it seem easier or freer and maybe even more enjoyable, just because all of a sudden we realize we're home, we're playing in front of our family and friends in our own in gym where we know that the familiarity of how to shoot in that gym and how to prepare, and it's just going to be a lot easier, and having rest and not being tired, from riding on the bus for 10 hours or something. So today's trip's only 2.5. It's going to seem like nothing because we've already made a 10-hour trip and an 8-hour trip. So today's going to go really quickly, I think, for our guys. And that's because we've already experienced those longer trips.
Speaking of which, wanted to wish you this, but I'll go ahead and do it now. Great luck tonight, Coach Rob. Obviously, that's Wednesday night, folks. So as you're listening to this, you already know the result. If you're following along the Milligan Buffs, as you should be, because it's my alma mater and they're awesome. And that's Coach Rob's team. But yeah, I mean, this Milligan team has played 5 straight road games to start this season. And this game Wednesday night is their first conference game. And it's just going to seem normal because it's all this team has known this season. And it's those kind of things to help get you in those rhythms and habits. And so to Carolina's point, Coach, not only has it been this game at Kansas, what helped get was the fact that they played a true road exhibition game at Memphis, which obviously reaped benefits. And next Friday night, there's another true road game at Hawaii ahead of the Maui Invitational. And so, Coach, as Carolina then gets ready, obviously they have the Georgia Tech game mixed in early December. But when we get to the main chunk of ACC play, similar to last year, the first 2 ACC games are on the road at Louisville on New Year's Day. That's kind of fun. And then at Notre Dame on that Saturday, January 4th. So what are the things that Carolina has done at Memphis, at Kansas, and next Friday at Hawaii going to prepare this team to be ready to do when they go to the Yum Center and when they go to South Bend, Indiana, which is going to be miserable in early January, by the way?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things, and this is maybe not the question you asked, but when they get on the road, we may have 10 or 12 people there, and we feel like, man, we're traveling really well to go to Tampa and have 10 or 12 people. But when they show up in Hawaii, there'll be hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were wearing Carolina blue and supporting the Tar Heels, and they've worked their schedule out to be able to go to Hawaii to watch the Heels play. That's got to be super encouraging to especially a freshman who hasn't experienced this yet, and all of a sudden you're in Hawaii, you look up and you see a sea of Carolina blue shirts and polos and stuff. That's got to be almost surreal to realize how important your program is and what the tradition is. Those experiences, I think, are just as important to when you score a basket on the road and hear cheers. That changes things. All of a sudden you realize, hey, we got an opportunity, to do something special because this is not your normal program. The opportunities that they've had, to play Memphis and obviously Kansas on the road, to me, the most encouraging thing is to get down 20 points and come back and take the lead in the second half. For them to be able to realize we can play anybody, anywhere, any day, and we're going to compete. And Hubert alluded to that in the post game interview, but you can't get down 20 in Fog Allen and expect to win. But man, they could have very easily, especially with the young guys, and RJ not shooting the ball well, could have been very easily just to kind of pack it up and say, hey, we're supposed to lose here anyway. Doesn't really matter. You look at what Baylor in the Gonzaga game.
That's right. That's a great point.
Hammered, and there was no fight. So to be able to see the competitive nature for them to fight back, when it's not like it's a tournament game and you're going home tomorrow if you don't win today. They're just playing for pride, and to me, that was the most important thing out of all the the preseason stuff or the early game stuff was to know that they can fight and they can compete.
And because it's one thing to fight and for your honor and respectability and keep it like, oh, it was a 20-point game, but man, we got it down to 15 or something like that. It's a whole other thing to fight all the way back and get a lead. Every time I've thought about that this week, it kind of boggles my mind. But honestly, I think that's kind of the streakiness that we're going to see with this team this year, where there's going to be stretches where shots are falling like crazy and other stretches where it's like the Sahara Desert. So that is what it is. Coach, one last quick question for you that I've wanted to ask you all week that I just remembered I wanted to ask you. You talked and you triggered this for me, talking about Coach Williams and timeouts. Carolina's last possession winds up with an Elliot Cadeau 3 trying to tie it. Obviously, Kansas was able to deny what Carolina was trying to do. Would you have taken a timeout either before that play started or once you realized that Kansas was shutting off the water a little bit, or would you have let it go as Coach Davis did?
Yeah, there's two different theories. The big thing for me with my program where is my trust with the guys on the floor right now? If it's an upperclassman group that I know that I can trust, let the play out. We're not going to give the defense time to set. That's the thing about calling a timeout. Everybody says, well, call timeout, call timeout. Well, that just gives them the chance to either change defenses or put a better defender in the game or mix up the matchups. And then you got to get the ball back in bounds, which is always never a guarantee. You always have to make sure that seems simple, but there's all those little things that get more complicated when you call timeout, and then you're in a situation where you're having to make a play. Hindsight, he missed the three. We're all sitting there going, yeah, we probably should have called timeout. You've got a couple sideline out of bound 3-point, plays that are in your book. You figure out which one you want to run. I probably would have done exactly the way Coach Davis did. Let's just go play, and hopefully we can create something, because the guys are really good at that. They're very talented. You got your best team on the floor anyway. Let's go ahead and try to make a play. But it's very easy to question that when you're sitting there watching on TV. It's much harder when you're standing on the sideline and you've got a second to make a decision, and in one way or the other, you've got to make that decision, and then you got to live with it. And I think Coach handled it really well. And again, easy for us to be able to question. I probably would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That was my thought as well, but I wanted to, with you and your head coach's hat on, wanted to hear that from you as well. And especially I'm thinking early season, where it's like, let's figure it out, and so that's good stuff. All right, gang. Best of luck to Coach Rob and the Buffs on Wednesday night. Again, you'll already know the result of that as they play. Good stuff there. If you have not yet got Coach's new book, Carolina Basketball School, man, you need to go get this thing. Christmas is rapidly approaching, and you need gifts for the Carolina fans in your life and for the Duke and NC State fans who you love to hate. Wouldn't they love to get a Carolina book for Christmas? That'd be awesome. Make sure you go check that out. You can get it at Amazon, or you can email him directly to get Carolina Basketball School. A great read. You're going to want to make sure you get it if you have not already done so. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you do that so you don't miss a second of our show. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord community, we would love to have you there. Links in the show notes, absolutely free to join. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the great community. And if you want to go even deeper, join the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, where you can chat with me directly one-on-one through text and get free access to all of my stats and charts and data, which are updated along with the Carolina record book after every single game takes place. And I'm always adding new stats to that as well. For example, this week, I went back and added all the fast break numbers of the Hubert Davis era and Coach Williams last year as well, because really interested in that. That's in there as well. All right, guys, you know the drill. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow to get ready for American and the Wake Forest game on Saturday. But until then, peace.